Michael, as you're going in and you're working with people, if someone's like, okay, I need one thing that I can do between now and the end of the year to increase my leadership and be that unstoppable, what would it be?
It would start with applying the 80/20 rule and figuring out what are the one or two things that have the biggest positive impact on your overall effectiveness, right? So a lot of times we end up working on multiple things at one time, or we just work on something because someone gave us feedback on it. But you have to stop and say, is working on that going to have enough impact to make it worthwhile for the time I'm putting into it? So what I always do when I work with people is I narrow it down to the one or two things they believe are the biggest impact ideas that if they implemented would cause them to improve. And you start with that, right? You start with the one or the two because, as the 80/20 rule says, typically out of every 10 things you could work on, there's one or two that if you worked on, it'll have 80% of the impact, possible impact, and the other eight would only have maybe 20% of the impact. So you want to make sure you're picking the high value items and really focus on what's going to make the biggest difference. And then from there, it varies based on what you chose, right? So if for one person, it might be, hey, I need to stop cutting people off and being a better listener. For someone else, it might be, I need to control my emotional reactions, but you got to pick the one thing that's going to have the biggest impact because otherwise you could spend a lot of effort and only have a little bit of an impact.